Hey kids, it's Finn. I straightened my hair this past weekend. While it looks kind of nice, I'm a lazy motherfucker. I hate having my hair loose. I hate having to maintain it and take care of it. And so this style will probably be very short-lived, as I have bought some hair and it should be getting here tomorrow. So you can say goodbye to loose hair Finn, because this shit is not fucking it. To be honest, it really isn't. So the video I wanted to do today is on a topic that is difficult for me to define, but I will do my best to get it out in a coherent manner. We'll see. A couple weeks ago, I was asked if talking about my feelings was an experience that causes me anxiety. The short answer to that question is no. No, it doesn't. But I could understand why someone would feel that way. I could understand asking the question, because for a lot of people, feelings are difficult to tackle. It kind of requires you to dip into this whirlpool, this like incredibly deep, incredibly turbulent whirlpool, and pluck out little tidbits of yourself. And so that's difficult. And I could see how that would be distressing to a lot of people. For me, the pool is rather stagnant and pretty shallow. So going in there isn't, super difficult for me to do. But it is a bit draining. Just like any kind of engagement with other people, it's draining. It's honestly just draining. So before I get into the reasons why feelings and emotions are kind of difficult for me, let me give you some definitions, because I feel like, it's good to have those out of the way. So, an emotion. It's pretty simple. It is the physiological response to a stimuli. When you have an emotion, it's pretty quick, it's pretty fleeting, maybe 10 seconds to a minute. Emotions tend to be very simple. Sometimes you'll feel them, in your head, in your stomach. They'll feel tingly, they'll feel hot. It just depends on the person. Feelings, on the other hand, are a lot more nuanced. They're kind of the thoughts that cascade from your emotions. They're very much attached to your emotions and can trigger emotions. But they kind of contextualize and cement your emotions. They're pretty important in the experience of just being a human being. So let me try to give an example. Say someone takes something from you. Your initial emotion might be anger. You might feel it, in the back of your head. You might feel it in your ears. I typically feel anger in my ears. It might feel hot. You might feel it in your stomach. It just depends on you as a person. That anger is pretty fleeting, but you might have feelings along with that anger that kind of triggered the anger to continue. And a feeling that you might have is betrayal, because you trusted that person, you cared for that person, and they stole from you. Or you might feel stupid for trusting them in the first place. You might feel vindicated because you knew this shit was gonna happen and you've just been proven right because this person just was never trustworthy. It just depends on you as a person. It's definitely a situation to situation, person to person experience. So feelings are a bit more abstract and nuanced compared to an emotion. A lot more complicated, and definitely based on the situation and the person. So I've talked about it in previous videos. Feelings to me are like emotional memories. They are based on prior experiences. They're based on conditioning, being told, how a situation might make you feel. And they're also based on observation, seeing how other people feel, taking social cues from other people in order to understand and ascertain, you know, what's going on in a situation as far as emotions go. And so as you experience emotions, you build upon this emotional memory, you bank emotional memories. And feelings, emotional memories, they are they're nuanced, but they also evolve. They become very, very rich and deep in how someone experiences them and what they mean to a person. And it becomes very difficult for a person that is disconnected from their emotions to bank an emotional memory, because the emotions might not ever come, or they might be very muted. And so feelings are difficult to not only discern, but also to even create, like within oneself. So when you don't have an emotion, or you don't feel the emotion, the accompanying feelings don't come. And so you can't bank, you know, this rich history of emotional memories when there's no emotions to begin with. Not only does disconnection from emotions cause issues with banking an emotional memory, so does the disconnect from other people, because feelings are very much a learned experience. In order to build that foundation for experiencing feelings that cascade from emotions, you kind of observe other people. You take those social cues from other people and internalize those, and kind of mold them to fit into your own way of living. I think it's very much a learned experience, but also a very internal experience. So for schizoid people, there is kind of this disconnect both externally and internally, and the ability to kind of learn feelings from social cues and to connect to emotions in order to build feelings from that foundation built on social cues. And another thing that I've talked about before is how memory and emotion kind of occupy a similar space to me, where a memory can become something in your imagination, and your imagination can fool you into thinking that it's a memory. I feel that the way that we build our imaginative world is based a lot on memories, and then also using our intuition to fill in the gaps as far as things that could possibly happen. But I think that memories are a huge part of imagination, because oftentimes you can have a dream and think that it actually happened when it didn't. And so that space, I think, is similar, while it's not exactly the same. And it's similar for emotional memories and emotional imagination. I think a component of emotional imagination is empathy. In order to have imagination, you need to have memory. And when you don't have emotional memory, emotional imagination becomes difficult, because the memories are a really important part of building imagination. And so you're not able to create this framework for understanding how others are feeling, for putting yourself into someone else's shoes, because the emotional memories really aren't there, but also the connectivity to other people isn't there. That's why I think that empathy is so difficult for people who are schizoid. So for me, emotions are pretty muted, and this affects my ability to create emotional memory and have feelings about any particular situation. The range of emotions that I experience is pretty narrow, and it's also muted. And so that makes my feelings a little juvenile, I would say. Even though I am a person who is older, who is pretty mature, I have a pretty expansive vocabulary, I am able to access my thoughts and to express them well, my feelings tend to be pretty shallow. So I definitely do feel feelings. I don't want to say that I don't. I experience emotions, and from that cascade feelings. The way that I experience emotions and feelings makes it difficult to want to engage in those feelings. And it's because of this shallowness to my experience. Emotions oftentimes register to me as stress, which is not the preferred way to experience an emotion, I would suspect. In the past 5 years, I had a couple times where I felt happy, like I felt the emotion of happiness, and I felt it in my stomach. It felt like butterflies, almost like I needed to take a shit. And it was just an overwhelmingly stressful experience. It wasn't pleasant. I just felt restless, like almost like I was losing my mind a little bit. The same thing kind of happens with anger. And anger is probably the emotion that I experience the most intensely, and it has a tendency to make me shut down. And so emotions for me aren't things that I really want to engage with, but expressing my feelings about having that emotion isn't a distressing experience at all. Oftentimes I find that I fall back on talking about my thoughts, my objective thoughts about a situation, rather than my feelings. I feel that I can rely on those more readily, because my feelings are typically just stress, and that isn't information that is particularly helpful, especially when trying to be nuanced in the explanation. So my feelings aren't particularly reliable. Sometimes my thoughts aren't, but my thoughts are really the only thing I have. And I think this reliance on thoughts rather than feelings makes people assume that schizoids are very smart individuals when we're just a little more rational than the average person. But yeah, feelings for me aren't stressful to talk about. They're not difficult to describe. They're just very shallow. They're kind of stunted. And I do think it's important to talk about these kind of things, make these kind of distinctions, because from person to person it's very different. So hopefully that was helpful in kind of clearing up my experience, at least. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. If you have anything to add, go right ahead. For now, I'll talk to you guys later. Deuces.